Welcome to the Atheist Podcast. I'm Erin.
And I'm Kelley. Atheist is where we will explore American cultural trends through the lenses of a devout theist
and a devout atheist. We will discuss the messiness of being human,
the latest in social science, psychology, and American culture,
and what any of it has to do with Homo sapiens' longtime preoccupation with religion. Hey, Kelley.
Hey, Erin. How's it going?
It's going well. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I just got home 2 days ago from a vacation in the Caribbean.
That sounds nice.
It was awesome. And now it's like going to be 15 degrees here this week and snow.
Yeah.
It's
a real bummer.
It's kind of a bummer. But that's okay. I like the snow too. I like my cozy sweaters and fireplace. So everything's good.
At least you're coming into it with having, some sunshine under your belt. So I'm headed to somewhere warm next week. So I got to get through this week and then.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. Well, I'm excited for our conversation today. It's kind of a theme that we kind of go back to. So you want to kind of introduce what we're going to talk about?
Yeah, for sure. So it is a theme that we come back to because I think this is one of like the fundamental themes of being human and like where really a lot of our religious institutions and communities really like stem from this human desire to like be in community with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And we seek this out in all kinds of different ways. I mean, our religious institutions are just one example of that, but have been a really strong, powerful example of that throughout history. And what kind of got me thinking about it again. I mean, it's always kind of in the back of my mind, but there was a new cover story in the Atlantic that was called "The Antisocial Century," which is interesting because I had read The Anxious Generation. We've done an episode on that, and that touches on a lot of the themes, but the writer Derek Thompson, he takes a little bit of a different aim at this because he doesn't just say this is all social media or that it's all smartphones. Now, that's definitely like an important piece of kind of like where we are in this moment, but he starts, this with going back further to like kind of the OG technological revolution that started to pull people apart, which was the automobile. And the ability for people to move away from cities and move out to suburbs where they could have a more like private, isolated experience.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then he kind of goes into this next wave, which is the introduction of the television. And he kind of sets it up like, at this period in human history or American history, that people have about 3 extra hours of leisure time a day, and that they basically like reorient all of their time and attention to spending those 3 hours watching television.
Yes.
But essentially that like this environment of like having experiences at home continues to become like just private, personal experiences at home. And maybe like, even though he's talking about the antisocial century, he's recognizing that the family bonds are actually stronger and like more intense than they would have been previously because like that family unit has become the unit, but we've lost the village, so to speak. Right. And so he kind of gets into then you've got like the Robert Putnam, which is the famous book Bowling Alone, where he's kind of tracing the decline of all of our institutions, right? So like the bowling club, but also like our religious institutions, like just declining membership in all of these institutions that bring people together in the village, right?
And also he mentions too how like technology has brought all those things. So we don't feel like we need the bowling team anymore or the mahjong club because we can play Words with Friends from our home, or we can, kids play video games and have entire relationships with communities of people online, or we can, so we don't have to go to the theater, we can stream everything from home, so everything is accessible from home, even like grocery shopping, right? I don't even have to go grocery shopping if I don't want to.
Yep.
So there's no reason to go out.
He opens the piece with this like story of like this really popular restaurant in his town where he's going to dinner with his wife and daughter, and when he gets there, like the bar is closed, but there's like 10 takeout bags on the
Yeah.
counter. And what he realizes is in 2023 that 74% of the restaurant industry is being driven by takeout.
Yeah.
Like,
Wow.
I know, right? Which is, so it's like the bar, which is kind of that like quintessential, like I might interact with a stranger because I'm going to talk to the bartender, right? Or
Yeah.
maybe these other people that are sitting at the bar, like the bar is closed, you know?
The bar is closed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's crazy. Okay, keep going, keep going. Okay,
Yeah,
so television, all these different things. Also, even like uh church attendance. Church attendance has definitely dropped, but also most churches have continued kind of online worship um even after the pandemic. So a lot of people, including myself, will like, you know, and like
yeah.
things like my parents who really can't, because of their age and their health, can't really go to like, and don't want to go to a big mega church and like navigate that. So every Sunday they watch Pastor Willie from the comfort of their own recliners.
I wonder, so one of the things that he talks about too is like, so I kind of mentioned the family unit is stronger, right? Like parents, especially
Yeah.
parents with more like disposable income, are spending much more time with like rearing their children than in past decades. And so he's like that unit is really strong. He's like also the tribe is strong, meaning like I can go online and find people who think exactly like I think and
Yeah.
like get in that group. He's like, what's gone is the village, which is the
Yeah.
intermixing of people that are like not necessarily all having the same point of view.
Yeah. Those
And
bridge relationships.
yeah, and that's like
Yeah.
it's like that cooling saucer, right? That if you're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
I'm actually interacting with this person who doesn't share my belief set, but like they're actually pretty okay." Like I
Yeah.
like, that tempers are like partisan, you know, like
Right.
instincts.
Well, and when you think about it too, it also increases our bias, because if we don't, already it was hard if you were living in a certain community and had, in a town, or had a certain economic, of a certain economic status, you might not know people outside your race, or people who were different from you. You might never interact with somebody who's trans, or, different things. You don't have that proximity. And even now, so with this, we definitely don't have that proximity.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah, like people are spending, what was the statistic in here in terms of let me see if I can find it. So yeah, like starting in 2020, is like the change in average minutes spent at home in kind of 2023 versus 2003. So in the last like 20 years, we're now spending almost 2 more hours a day at home than we were 20 years ago,
Wow.
which is
Wow.
a pretty interesting. Yeah. So the other thing that I thought was like that a take that I hadn't heard him, or a take that he had in the piece that was something that I hadn't considered was, and this is the reason he calls it the antisocial generation versus like the lonely generation, because a
Yeah.
lot of our rhetoric has been around like the lonely generation, right?
Right.
And
Right.
he's like, but people are choosing this.
Right.
So it's there's that's like the antisocial piece. And what his contention is like that there's a difference between solitude and loneliness. And the
Yes.
problem is that when we are spending time alone, we aren't actually spending it in solitude. We're spending it scrolling, which
Yes.
is not solitude, which is not contemplative, which is not like enriching or bringing us back to like a
Right.
state where we're ready to be with people.
So this quote from the article, this to me is like the most true thing that, and this kind of blew my mind. Phones mean that solitude is more crowded than it used to be, and crowds are more solitary.
Yep.
I
Yep.
mean, if that doesn't just blow you away. So he quotes Nicholas Carr, who wrote the new book, Super Bloom: How Technologies of Connection Tear Us Apart. And he says, boundaries helped us. You could be present with your friends and then reflective in your downtime. Now our social time is haunted by the possibility that something more interesting is happening somewhere else, and our downtime is contaminated by the streams and posts and texts of dozens of friends, colleagues, frenemies, strangers.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's never quiet.
right. And people are less, and when you're with people, yeah, they're oftentimes, we've all experienced that when we're talking with somebody and we're trying to be present with somebody, and maybe I'm sure we're all guilty of it too. We're just not as present in that space as we
Yeah, we
used to.
could be because we're being pulled out
Yeah.
of that ability to engage because we're getting notifications, right? Like
Yeah.
we're getting text messages or phone calls or whatever that are like redirecting our attention. And again, like in a way, I mean, I think the question of like choice, like how much of this is our choice and how much of it is manipulation, right?
Yeah.
Is another question, but like there's no, I mean, like we all choose to have these devices, right? And on
Right.
some level, but at the same time, it's like it also feels almost like compulsory. Like I know that, I mean,
Yeah.
from Monday to Friday, it would be really hard for me to do my job without having a smartphone and a computer available to me almost all the
Sure.
time, right?
Sure.
And
And
so
even when you're
you're,
out like with friends, like you have kids and it's like you want to you want your kids to have access to you, or but there is something about like, and I've totally done this with people before, when when I've been there, been sitting with somebody like at a bar or at a restaurant, and somebody's talking to me and I'm kind of there, and then all of a sudden I start talking and then they pick up their phone, and you just feel like I start seething.
yeah.
I'm like, no.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's not just like a two-way active conversation. It's like you're always managing this other thing.
Stream, and I think it feels stressful to our nervous system, right? And so
Yeah.
like it's part of the reason that I think people are like choosing um to retreat because they feel like kind of tapped out, even though
Yeah.
they're never really actually getting like that full kind of human,
Yes.
interaction. So they're like never quite filling that cup, right?
Yeah. Because when we're there, there's some kind of like hypervigilance that is activated because there's this other thing pulling at our attention.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
stream of yeah, it's 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 so stressful. Like I feel like it's
Yeah.
really stressful. I
Yeah.
hate it. I like really hate it. And I hate how it like fractures the mind. And it's interesting that you bring up or that forgot that he had referenced Nicholas Carr. I'm not surprised that he did. So that's the same writer that wrote The Shallows. And
Oh, uh-huh.
he was like early internet, right? He was like, man, this is changing like my brain, right?
Yeah.
This is changing my personality. It's changing my ability to read things that are hard to read.
Hmm.
It's changing my ability to I mean, that's why he calls it the shallows, right? It's like everything
Hmm.
is just like at the surface. There's
Yep.
um and so I yeah, I genuinely think like when we our information technology, like it's changing all of our personalities ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and most certainly our brains. And, it's, I don't know if I said this one on our last episode when we were talking to Wendy. Um, but one of the things that I've noticed from and this is kind of switching. I mean, this is solitary practice, but like by from doing all this like this painting and like, it's not even like good painting. I'm just like painting shapes and playing with colors, but I'm doing it like every day. And the
Yeah.
thing that I've noticed is that it is changing my brain and it is changing the way that I literally see the world. Like I see shapes differently. I see colors differently. Like it's fascinating to me.
That's
And so
awesome.
and it changed it so quickly. Like over the course of like a month, just doing something for a month and and it is totally yeah, changed the synapses in my brain. And so when I think about, and that's how gratitude works. Like when we practice, when we have like an intentional practice of gratitude and we actually like write down like these are the things that I was grateful for today, what happens is then it becomes like a program that runs in the back of your brain. And so all of a sudden you start seeing the world differently and you start seeing those things that you're grateful for. And you don't have to be thinking like consciously, I am going to walk through the world and look for shapes or colors or look for gratitude. It just happens because you
Happens.
practice them. And so what we've been doing is we've been practicing, right? Fracturing our attention. We've been practicing interrupting ourselves. We've been practicing, and we've been not practicing the things that truly make us human, like being
Hmm.
present in a conversation, like just being silent and not letting our attention wander. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, it's
The other part too is like we do sort of underestimate like the Vivek Murthy, the Surgeon General, he was leaving office,
yeah,
and his parting prescription for America was community.
yeah,
And it's because if you look at the chart of like the things that are like most likely to kill you
yeah, right,
before like smoking, drinking, all
yeah,
of the other, all these other things are, and it's like the quality of your like close
relation,
personal relationships, but also
yep,
like your friend,
secondary,
yes, your secondary relationships, like, and
yeah,
actually the secondary relationships actually have a more impact on your lifespan,
yeah,
which is crazy. But we tend to underestimate that, and actually people tend to. One of the studies that he talks about um, in the piece is there's a scholar out of the University of Chicago named Nick Epley, and he did this study where he had people on trains, like either so there was like three groups. It was either um, you just behave your control group, right? Like you can just sit on your phone or what
yeah,
the whole time. You can have a like basically like introduce yourself and like try to strike up a conversation with
right,
another person, or you can just kind of spend the time like in solitude.
yeah,
And people, when you ask them before they did the activity, like what did they think they would prefer, people were always like, oh, by basically being on my phone or being by myself, right? Like that's what they
yeah,
thought they would prefer. But every single time they found that they actually enjoyed the train ride more if they ended up having a conversation with another
conversation,
person.
yep,
Yeah. And they were able to repeat that on like city buses in London on the underground, like
mhm,
over and over and over again. And so he would, it's like, just even being able to, tell somebody like when you're out in public, like, oh, hey, I like your hat. And, just see where the conversation goes, that you actually like, that
yeah.
improves the quality of your day.
For sure. For sure. Just yeah, being on this vacation last week, when you're away on vacation,
Yeah.
you tend to have more conversations with people. And I don't know what that is, but like maybe because other people are on vacation, so you're automatically sharing something because, these people are here as sightseers and yeah, I had so many great interactions with strangers. I probably had more interactions with strangers last week than I've had in the last 6 months, probably.
Yeah. Well, I wonder too. I mean, you think about like part of this is kind of going back to even the cars, right?
Yeah.
The image of the cars. It's like the built environment, right?
Yeah.
Our
Yep.
environments are designed in such a way that they don't necessarily foster that
Going
kind of
out.
interaction. Yeah.
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 Going, even just like going to a museum or going to a beach or going to a restaurant. Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah. The other thing that I thought you might find fascinating in the article, and I don't know if this like stuck out at you or not, but that he gets into this idea of the secular monks is what he calls them,
Oh, yeah.
but he kind of touches on there is a part where he kind of gets it a little bit into sort of some of that topic of the anxious generation, like what is this doing to young people as they're sort of like coming into the world and they're trying to figure out their lives. And he kind of there's an article that was in a religious journal by an author named Andrew Taggart, and he sort of is commenting on this trend in young men, I guess, like in their 20s, 30s, that are on social media and they're sort of like performing this you know
Kind of
like a
ascetic lifestyle, this
yes,
like a
yes.
monk's lifestyle.
Yes, where they're,
Yeah.
they're getting up and they're meditating and they're doing their cold plunge and their workout. And what the thing that he says he felt like was so striking in all these videos was just the absence of other people. That it was
Mhm.
like all just about kind of me time,
Mhm.
and like this like intense cultivation of just the self,
Yeah.
which like I kind of wondered about um how do we think about that, like because there is a certain level of when we think about our like the Buddha, and
Mhm.
like we aspire to like a certain level of like contemplative reflection practice. How is that different? Like how is that performed differently? And I mean, obviously if you're posting on social media you're not really like engaging in
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
right? but
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
curious your take on that.
Well, yeah. So I think it's interesting because there's different kinds of religious practice, and um, there are different people who go into different orders that have different things. But one of the things that I've um, read a lot about is the Benedictine, kind of the beginnings of like uh, that kind of monkish lifestyle. And it's there's a term called ora et labora, and it's basically it's there's three parts to what it means to kind of live in that lifestyle. And it's work. So you spend a portion of your day working, and you work in community. You work in community with other people for the good of the community. Um, there's also then like the singing of the psalms, like songs. So that is something like either pray or sing, like again in community. They're not like praying out like in they're not just praying in solitude. So that's something like singing together, right? Very much community. And then there's the time alone, and then there's kind of the prayer where they are alone and they're contemplative. So when you think about it that way, it's really 2/3 of your time is spent in community.
Yep, yep.
And then there's only a third of your time that is spent alone in kind of prayerful reflection and
Yeah,
contemplation.
yeah.
So I think, you know, if we were to kind of try to, you know, think about that kind of secular monk, like what does it look like for us to have kind of a balanced practice? Um, yeah, we're probably spending a lot. It's probably flipped. We're probably spending 2/3 of our time kind of alone. And even in that time, we're
It's
not being really
crowded. Right. Right.
that
Right. We're not
crowded alone
alone.
time. Yeah. And that's the other thing, right? Is true contemplation and meditation is about noticing. It's noticing those distractions and kind of letting them go. And it's not sending our attention to those, it's like, but when we're talking about like notifications on a phone, we have those already in our head, right? A worry or a plan, like what am I, like something in the future, or I'm I'm thinking about I'm ruminating about what happened last night. Those are all like those kind of notifications. So think about it. If you're trying to kind of have a contemplative moment or space, and you're only just dealing with the like literal notifications on your phone or the things that are kind of popping up, and you don't even get to learning how to practice kind of letting go those mental distractions that
Yeah.
come up for us.
Yeah. There's like no practice of
No
that. Right.
practice. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah. And I mean, I can't say like, I feel like I don't spend a lot of time in like quiet, truly quiet
Yeah.
contemplation. I mean, and I get and the author of the piece, he's a dad of a young child, right? And he's
Mhm.
like, "Hey, I'm the first person to be like, being able to get some peace and quiet is like a
Yeah.
rare thing, but this I don't know. I need to figure out like how to just to not fill
Yeah.
any empty time with something, you know?
Yeah. When
Um,
you run, do you like listen to podcasts or
yeah, I'll listen to books.
Mhm.
And then sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'll that's probably the only time, right? Is like
Mhm.
if I'm running and I don't listen to something.
Yeah.
Um, if
But that could
yeah.
be a practice.
Yeah, or at least like
Try doing
even if
that.
I was just like, hey, for the first
10
20
minutes.
minutes,
Yeah.
don't listen to anything.
Yeah. Yeah. And then just notice how much, because as a 7, notice how much of your brain how much of your thinking goes to either what am I going to listen to, or like planning, like for
Oh, yeah.
that future planning.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
because it feels good, doesn't it? Doesn't it?
I
It just
know.
like, what am I going to do next? What's going to happen? Blah, 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 blah. Like that's where our brains go.
I know. I know. I'm so stuck right now. I feel like in just like there's not enough hours in the day. So
Mhm.
I'm always like because I'm taking classes right now, and so the one of my professors who is amazing, he has a podcast that is like a supplement to the class, and
Oh,
so
cool.
I know, and it's economics on the go.
I love it. I
um,
love it.
so I'll be like listening to his show sometimes, but like I feel like a lot of my workout time has now been kind of oriented to like, okay, is there something I can either like if it's part of the textbook, can I put it on like where
Yep.
it reads to me or something like that, where I feel like I'm trying to
Yep.
capture as much time back as possible, which is not good.
Yeah.
I know that it's not a good thing for like my mental health, right? To just like
Yeah.
cram as much shit into every minute of the day as possible.
Yeah. But even it doesn't take long. And it's that, and here's the thing. It's not about having large swaths of time where you're
Yeah.
just being contemplative. It's about having that intentional time, like what he says, where we're really practicing what it means to be still, for our
Yeah.
brains to be still. Because if we can practice it just consistently for short chunks, small things often, right?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Practice it, and we then we see the fruits of that practice in the rest of our lives.
Yeah. It's true. It's right. I like that you got my tagline, my small things
I
often.
know,
That's like my
small
favorite.
things often.
That's like that's every time one of my coworkers, he always sometimes he'll like end a meeting, he'll be like, anyone have words of wisdom? I'm like, small things often. That's always, it's like, that's the answer to
It's a good
everything.
one. It's a good one. Yeah.
Um, so one other thing I thought I would bring into this conversation that I
Yeah.
sent you a while back, but it was a newsletter, is Esther Perel's
Oh,
newsletter,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
which she doesn't write them very frequently. She only puts them out periodically, so it's kind of a good one. Like if people want to, be on a newsletter and
Yeah.
they don't want to get something every single day or even every week. It's like every few months. I feel like that she sends one out,
And
but
you're like,
uh,
ooh, Esther.
yeah, yeah, and obviously we're super fans here of
Hmm.
Esther, but she's kind of talking about in this piece, um, which is kind of goes back to my like thought about or comment about the built environment, but like is romantic consumerism is what she
Mm,
was like hitting on, but it's this idea of an endless optimization game that reduces humans to as commodities swiped and sorted by
mm,
algorithms,
yeah.
and like that are how that like mediates our romantic relationships.
Hmm. Yeah. What does she say? Like, how does that affect like, is she just talking about like dating, like online dating? Or is she saying that actually, like, once we actually are in a relationship, that somehow colors the relationship?
Yeah, she's kind of talking about more in like the dating environment. So for young
Mhm.
people like trying to like
Yeah.
establish and like find a relationship that like that we don't have as many what is it called? Is it third spaces where it's
Yeah.
like, you have like your home and then you go to work, but like spaces that are like
Yeah.
where like the bar, right? The bar is closed, like
The bar is
where you would
closed.
go to have an
Actually meet
interaction.
people. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And even like the office where, I mean, I think, back in the day, it was like almost 50% or more of relationships were like you met someone at work sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like now, you work
That's frowned
remotely.
upon.
Yeah. And it's frowned upon. And like, so it's just a lot of barriers to even like having that kind of a
Yeah.
relationship begin. I mean, we at my work, it's like a hybrid environment, so you can
Yeah.
kind of choose. Again, it's like you get to choose whether or not you go to the office, and
Mhm.
it's interesting like um the habits of people like pre-COVID. And what's interesting is that it's always been work from anywhere. Even
Mhm.
before COVID, they were work from anywhere.
Mhm.
um and they would always say like the default pre-COVID was people came to the office and then they would work from home like on occasion. And now
Yeah.
it's the default is
Work from
people work
home.
from home, but they come into the office on occasion. And it's like part of it's just some of like kind of going back to what you're saying. It's like the habit that you get into,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
almost like that path of least resistance.
Well, and I think too, right? Yeah, the path of least resistance, but I think it be it something shifts, right? So again, changes our brain chemistry or our brain synapses. So now when we're asked to come back to the office more, or an entire, like every federal worker is
Yeah.
going to be, like the thing that they're not taking into consideration with that is that most federal workers, like I have a friend who works for the FDA, she only had to go into the office 2 days a month. She was only required. So she was living like she lives in New York City, but
Yeah.
she would just come into New York for like 4 days, like for a weekend and then 2 days, and then she would go back and she was living upstate. She was living up in the woods, like, she was like, so her entire lifestyle like could not be any different than living in Manhattan and then living in like a cabin in upstate New York, like, growing all your own food and stuff. And so now all these people that are being asked to come back, their brains, I mean, that's asking a lot. And I'm not saying it's like, oh, people, yeah, people, if that's fine. People go back to work. That's fine,
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's nobody's taking into consideration the fact that these people have not had to step into an office very often. And now there's real, true anxiety and
Yeah.
mental anguish about going in, not just because like, oh, I don't want to go into the office, but like, no, like people have their brains have changed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and I mean that's an interesting point too that I hadn't really thought about. It was that a lot of people, if their requirements weren't to go into the office, like if you were only going in 2 times a month, like you would presumably not even live near where you were
Right,
trying to work. I mean,
right.
you could live in a whole in like all the way across the country. It's like, okay, I have to fly in 2 days a month or something. I
Yeah,
mean, yeah,
yeah.
that's an interesting yeah, that's interesting. Yikes.
Sorry, I hope you're not hearing all these beeps. My phone is beeping.
Beeping. It's
See,
pulling. I
again.
know. I know. I was getting the same thing. I was
And I even put it
like
on.
Lauren
Uh,
was texting me and I was like, oh, what is she, like, what is she saying? And like, I can't
ugh.
look. Cause then I'm like distracted. It's,
It's driving me
ah,
nuts. I mean, I put it on airplane mode and still it's like coming on. It's like,
it
ah,
doesn't matter. I'll put it on like do not disturb airplane mode. And it's like, it's somehow there's
it
still
doesn't matter.
notification. There's still notifications.
They're still coming. Now it just notified me that my do not disturb is on. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
um so the so Esther gives us like a list of like here's some things to think about and
Oh
like a
yeah.
list of like here's
Give
some
us
like
some
to-dos, right?
yeah, give us some
So
to-dos.
so first we'll do the considerations. So these are things that I think are kind of little words of wisdom. So she talks about human connection is not dependent on an internet connection.
Oh, I like that.
Connection is not a transaction. It's a vibrational field we can tap into on a daily basis in the most mundane of circumstances.
I also love how she says vibrational field
Yeah.
with her accent, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, wait, say that one again. It's not a transaction.
So,
It's a
connection is not a transaction. It is a
yes.
vibrational field we can tap into on a daily basis
Nice.
in the most mundane of circumstances.
Oh, I like that.
And that's right. Like when
Yeah.
I was like, it again, it's like the small things often, right? I was saying this the other day to some women that I'm friends with that like I met because our kids were going to school together and
Yeah.
we would be at pickup at the same time. And it was just like, there was something so lovely about this like 10 to 15 minute interaction that we would have every day.
Mhm.
That like now our kids are at the middle school and they're walking and but like we don't have that touch tone
Yeah.
anymore. And
Yeah.
I don't know, it's just it like hurts not to have that,
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and actually, so Vivek Murthy, when I listened to a podcast where he was talking about kind of like the antidotes, right, to the antisocial generation, and he was saying that one of the things that him and his wife started doing was they would just like text someone or call someone like out of the blue and be like, "Hey, are you at home? We're gonna stop by in like
Mhm.
10 minutes just for like a quick chat."
Yeah.
And they would,
I just I just did that today.
yeah, it's awesome.
I tried to. They didn't answer. So
Answer.
but I left a message and I was like, "Oh, I'm right by your house. Are you home? I was just going to stop over."
I love that. No, yeah, that was like our
Yeah.
for Christmas this year. We like stopped by different people's houses and we were just like, hey, we're dropping off a
Yeah.
gift and like just
Yeah.
even if we just stood in the doorway to talk to them for like
Yeah.
5 minutes while it was just
I
nice
love
to
that.
see them
I love
um
that.
in
That's what my
person.
mom used to call refrigerator friends. Friends who can just stop by and then who feel comfortable opening your refrigerator.
Fridge. Oh, I love that.
I know.
Yeah.
Isn't
Yeah.
that a good
That's a
one?
good name. It's a good
Yeah.
name for that.
Yeah. Refrigerator friends.
Mm, that's good. Okay. I'm gonna use that one again.
Okay.
Um, let's see. Okay, and then she talks about practicing the small acts of connection, family,
Mhm.
friends, colleagues, classmates, um, is the key to building back the social muscles, right? Which is what you
Mhm.
were talking about.
Yep.
Um, and then the social muscles are the same ones that help us reconnect with long lost friends, cool the heat of
Mhm.
conflict, maintain our
Yep.
curiosity about those who are different from us, and
Yep.
invite someone on a date, even the
Yeah.
partner you already have.
Yeah. Nice.
But
I
that's
like
the
that.
like, yeah, it's the thing that I think the author was talking about when he was talking about the like the village, right? Like being out in kind of in person in the world, interacting with all
Hmm.
different kinds of people, like build these social muscles that sort of like become the he was talking about it from a political standpoint, but that like cooling mechanism in the way that we kind of approach everybody, right?
Hmm.
It tempers us in some ways. At least
Yeah.
the side that can get really like agitated and tribal.
Well, and and fearful, right? Because it reminds me, that's reminding me when I was down with my mom, and like I mentioned in the previous podcast, my mom is in hospice right now. And so I was reading Walking Each Other Home by Ram Dass and Mirabai Bush. And they're basically talking about like how do we face death? Like how do we face the end?
Yeah.
And kind of the thesis of the book is we face our fear of death by embracing and and engaging in love fully in our lives.
Yeah.
And that means showing up and being present to people. So when I think about this antisocial generation or this, yeah, like there's there's something like there's a lot of things that are lost, including probably, or maybe one of the things we probably gain is an increased fear of death, I bet.
Yeah. Yeah. I bet you're right. I like don't fear death at all. Is that weird?
No, I don't either. I mean, yeah, I mean, I might like if I got a
Mm,
diagnosis tomorrow.
right, right, right. All of a sudden I'd be like, oh no.
But yeah, no. There's it's interesting. That's we should definitely have we should have Amy back on and maybe we can talk about some of those things like how do we live a life that doesn't fear death,
Yeah. Yeah.
that processes it.
Yeah, yeah, and I wonder too, like how much of that is just like personality, and how much of that is like lived experience, and how much of it that is cultural, technological. Like,
Right.
yeah, there's
Yeah, all of
probably
it probably. I mean,
yeah,
it's all those things in kind of different combinations for different
yeah,
people. But I thought
um,
that I felt like that was good advice, and that sounds like the same muscle, right?
yeah, yeah,
Like being in community and being kind and receiving love and being open to receive love allows you to not live in fear and anger.
yep, yep. It's true. It's true. So the last, so here were
Yeah.
her like things that you should do, right? So,
Okay.
okay, we're all gonna have to do these things. So, start one conversation with someone that you don't typically speak to.
Ooh.
So, a barista, a fellow commuter, a neighbor, or even a stranger in a line.
Yep.
So, you next time you're in an environment where you're like, okay, normally I would not do this, but I'm gonna do this, and
Yep.
see. And she says, keep it simple: a warm greeting, a lighthearted comment, a genuine question, um, and then so she says easy mode is like, I like your sweater. Something more complicated would be like, what's been the highlight of your day?
Yeah.
Um, that's a good, like the second one, um, that's like a go-to that I find when I try to go to
Oh,
like in small talk with people. Like
yeah.
I'll be like, so yeah, like what's been good today? Or like how's
Yeah.
your week been? And usually
Rather than just
that
like, "Oh, how are you doing?"
yeah,
More
yeah.
specific.
Because usually then somebody will give you something that
Yeah,
you can like
that's great.
go to the next thing. um so then, okay, so you start the conversation, you've got your prompt, observing the impact. So then how do you feel after the interaction? Did the other person respond positively? Did the mood
Yeah.
shift? So just kind of like being reflective of that experience. And then if you liked it, like try to do it every day or once a
Yeah.
week to kind
Yeah.
of build the muscle, right?
I thought about you this last week. One of the interactions I had when I was on vacation, I met this woman at the beach, uh, who was about to get married, and we were chatting, and turns out she is one of these what do you call it? Like mega runners,
Oh, yeah, ultras, like, does
ultra
ultras?
runner.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
She runs 100-mile
Yeah.
races, trail races,
Yeah.
trail races.
Yep, yep, yep. It's crazy.
It is crazy.
Lauren's old boss, who was at when she was in residency, the chief of the residency, like he would do some of those races, like the Leadville, and it's
Oh my
wild.
God. And I mean, she said about like hour 26, she starts hallucinating. Always. And she sees happy bears and they wave to her as she runs by. I learned so many things talking to this woman. She was fascinating.
I bet she has a real like community that she's
Oh yeah. Sure.
engaged with in that, like, that I guarantee, like, when you go to these races and stuff, it's probably a lot of the same people, because there's only so much of a cohort that is like can even do that,
Right. Well, she was having this destination wedding and she said, I didn't think anybody was going to come. She goes, but 60 people are flying here for the wedding.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Aww.
And she's making them do a run. Only 5 miles. I was like, oh God.
That sounds awesome.
Don't invite me to your wedding. And they have to hike. Yeah. Anyway, it was fun. This was a great conversation. And I feel like it took like a lot of what we've been talking about, but took it to kind of
another dimension, right?
It kind of focused it a little bit.
Yeah, I felt like there were definitely some new insights that piece, like, that have stuck with me and that I've been kind of thinking about since. So I think, the more we can kind of engage into, like, the more we can kind of untangle the nuances of, it's not like, yes, the phones are ruining our relationships and our intention, but like, to help us understand, like, why and why do we keep choosing it, and why, like, all of those the more that we understand it, I think the more honest conversation that we can have about it, the more that I hope we could actually, like, move into, like, a new place of, like, culturally, that allows us to kind of, like, have a renaissance of connection in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. And just understand and know what it is that we need. Know that we need time away from away from people and away from distractions. And then we also need time with people where we're not distracted away from the person. Yep. So, we have to, how do you be more intentional about how you spend your time and not let it just be like kind of messy.
Yeah. Time confetti. Yeah.
Time confetti. Yeah. Attention and time confetti. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for always having great conversations. I appreciate you as my thinking partner.
Well, I appreciate you. And you always teach me a lot. This was great. So thanks, Sarah.
All right. Yep. Catch you next time.
A huge heartfelt thank you to all of our listeners. Some of you joined us a year ago, some of you joined us recently, but all of you are helping us grow the show. Thank you so much.
Atheist is still advertising free, sponsor free, and available for free to everyone. Lots of podcasts have big production teams. Our team is just 3 friends working together to make something we hope puts good into the world and brings value to your life.
We always need your help. Please spread the word and share the show. All of our social links and other ways to support the show are available on atheistpodcast.com.
Atheist is produced by Justin Sywell of Trend Media, STL. Thank you for listening, and keep looking for connection.